Hey, what is up everyone? In today's video we're talking about the development history of Sea of Thieves. We'll be talking about the full history from the beginning of the development of the game to the present. If you haven't already watched the video about the history of Rare from last week, the company who created Sea of Thieves, I'd recommend watching that video first because it explains the history up until where we're going to be starting this video from. With that all being said, let's go ahead and get into the video. Our story starts back in the year of 2014. Rare had once been known for being an innovator and well-respected studio in the gaming industry, from some of their hit games like Donkey Kong Country, Banjo-Kazooie, and Perfect Dark. But starting in the 2000s, their good reputation began to fade as the quality of their new games after the studio was bought by Microsoft were pretty lackluster. After many mediocre titles, including a lot of Kinect games that never really made a big impact, the team wanted to create a fun, online multiplayer game that was both accessible to players and provided the right tools for players to make their own stories and adventures rather than be told what to do. They hoped this new game could revive their reputation and prove to Microsoft that they could do more than just make Xbox Live avatars. For most of the studio's 30-year history, the studio has been highly secretive and known for keeping its projects a mystery even to its own employees. They even made it so if an employee worked in one building, they weren't allowed to enter any of the other buildings that were at Rare. That was until we got one key person who can be seen as a significant factor to the Rare we see today, Craig Duncan. When he took over the studio in 2010, his first goal was to end the mysteries and secrecy both within Rare but also with the public. This I see as being a really significant factor in making Sea of Thieves the great game we all love today. The open and transparent relationship between the community and Rare has allowed the game to grow and flourish, with the community really having a huge impact in the development of the game. The first big project following the hiring of Duncan was Rare Replay, a collection of some of Rare's best titles from the past. While most of the studios work on a Rare Replay, Duncan began forming a small team to begin figuring out what would Rare's future be. This team started looking at games such as DayZ and EVE Online, and they wanted to create a game with a shared world where players could interact with each other and make their own stories. It was important to them to create a game that had a low barrier to entry, meaning it was easy for new players to hop in and start having fun quickly. And they wanted the game to have a wide audience appeal. I think this is why in Sea of Thieves we only see progression in the form of cosmetics and not for any skills or abilities. This makes someone playing since day one and someone just starting out both on an even playing field. The game relies more on your personal skills and how well you understand the mechanics of the game, rather than unlocking some advantage like a damage multiplier or a special weapon. Personally, I really like this approach, and I think it makes the game a lot more fair. So the team knew what game they wanted to make, but they just couldn't figure out a theme. They explored ideas such as deep space adventures, which I guess you could kind of say it turned out to be Starfield in the future, vampires, and dinosaur islands. None of these felt right though. That's when they came with the idea of pirates. At the time, there was no real competition in the pirate game market. Back then, the biggest competitor would probably have been Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which had come out a little before this. Now in present day, there's a lot more competition in this area due to the success of Sea of Thieves. The pirate theme fit perfectly for what they wanted to accomplish in making a game that allowed players to do whatever they wanted. They looked towards properties such as Pirates of the Caribbean and the Goonies, which I think can be seen a lot in the game, even before Pirates of the Caribbean would eventually end up actually being part of the game. With an idea in mind, next was to create a prototype to test it out. It took only 5 months for only 5 engineers and a few designers to build a prototype, which they called Athena. The game was very crude looking, but the major concepts they wanted to show were there. This prototype allowed a group of 4 players to sail a ship, explore uncharted islands, and fight off other pirates before bringing their loot back to sell. This prototype, while very crude, was very close to what we initially got when the game released to the public. The prototype wasn't great looking. It actually looked pretty similar to something say like VeggieTales rather than what we see in the game today. My favorite part of the prototype though must be the gray blobs used as playable characters. I kind of wish you could make your pirate look like this. It'd be hilarious to me. You can see a reference to these gray blobs in the game through a figurehead called the figurehead of the first crew. It's a very expensive figurehead that I've been debating whether or not to buy with gold. Maybe I'll do it one day, we'll see. This prototype was shown to the heads of Xbox. Included with that is Phil Spencer, who greenlit the development of the project. Something interesting about Sea of Thieves development is that the prototype was actually created in Unity, but they didn't like the way it looked visually, so they decided to change to Unreal Engine when the project was greenlit. And if you don't know, Unreal Engine has been used in tons of games that you're familiar with. This includes Fortnite, Gears of War, and a ton of other games. After the project was greenlit, almost all of the 200-ish staff members at Rare began working on the game. It was truly a group effort, and you could tell the team was really excited to work on an actual game after almost a decade of making Kinect games. At E3 2015, Rare revealed their next project, Sea of Thieves. Craig Duncan described the game to the public as being the most ambitious project Rare has ever done. This reveal was so cool and really made fans excited for what Rare had in store for us. Everything from the music to the environment and then seeing the ship with everyone working together is just amazing to see. There wasn't much news released until 2016. This is when Rare started the Insider program, where they had players start testing builds of the game leading up to the release. At E3 of that year, Rare released another trailer. This was a cinematic one, so not a gameplay one, but it looks really cool. But what I found crazy about it was all the hints to future content they had in it. So let's go ahead and actually watch it, and then I'm going to point out some stuff that I saw in it. Keep in mind the stuff I'm talking about wouldn't come out for like 3+ years after, which is crazy to think about. They had these plans for the game ready all the way back from the start. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the E3 2016 cinematic trailer and see what we can point out.
In folds of midnight water, side by side we sons and...
Alright, so right here, I believe this was an instrument that was planned, but just had never came out into the game. I think this was supposed to be part of the game though, because you see this a couple times in other trailers and other promotional stuff. So, I'm not sure why they canceled it. Maybe it was so that we could get the banjo instead? Who knows?
daughters we sent forth for no king's order.
Here we go, we got our first reference to pets being added to the game, where cats would be added several years later, which that's pretty interesting to see.
But we'll sail together. Hold fast, tides are turning, flames roar.
You have another pet here, but I don't think we have this exact one available. We have other birds that are similar to this, but I don't think in this color scheme we have one like that. Alright, so right here we have sirens, which didn't get added until 2021 of the game. That's crazy if you think about it. But sirens were teased all the way back in 2016. Alright, right here, you may not have noticed this when you first saw this trailer, but this is definitely the Gold Hoarder's skull from the Shores of Gold Tall Tale, which would be released a year after the game had launched in the anniversary update, which we'll talk about later in this video. I'll also say that this structure here kind of looks similar to either, say, the Ancient Vaults or the Siren Shrines. So while this is kind of a minor thing, it does have like the references to that. Alright, right here we got Flameheart, which he wouldn't really become a big character until the Heart of Fire Tall Tale, and then afterwards we had other world events with him inside of it. So that's another one of those things that was more than a year after the game launched. And the game launched in 2018. This is 2016. Maybe I'm the only one that finds this interesting, but I find it crazy to see like how much stuff is packed into this trailer that back then we didn't know it was going to be part of the game. We just thought it was going to, you know, be random stuff to look cool. Got another cat down there. Alright, and there we go, y'all. That's the cinematic trailer. Let me know if you spotted anything that I might have missed that was not at launch but came later. Let's get back to the rest of the video.
Today, I'm excited to share with you an extended look at never-before-seen gameplay from Rare's shared world adventure, Sea of Thieves.
E3 2017 is when we got our biggest look into the game outside of the Insider program. Rare showed off a 9-minute gameplay video, which I think was a great look into the game. The game was originally set to release in 2017, but was later pushed back to March of 2018. During this period between announcing the game and its eventual release, Rare would begin creating the game we see today, building off the original prototype with unique lands, spooky skeletons, and a highly well-designed and complex water system. Fun fact, Rare offered their water technology to PUBG, which had a close partnership with Microsoft at the time. But the code was so complex and so intricate that they couldn't implement it without basically recreating the whole game from scratch. So much work went into making the world of Sea of Thieves feel right. They wanted to make this pirate world an immersive and explorable place that you could just get lost in and live another life. They even went as far as to prevent players from making their own characters due to a fear players would make something that wouldn't fit in the game world. They ended up making the infinite pirate generator, which while I know many players don't like this, I have come to really like this about the game. No player looks the same, and I feel I can connect more with my pirate than I would with just any character in the game, due to mine being unique and one of a kind. Around the same time, the team went and started working on the visual style of the game, and they came up with a really unique look, and it's basically like hand-painted textures. They did this with the goal of having the game appear timeless and joyful. Sea of Thieves was really important for Xbox and its future. The year leading up to Sea of Thieves launch, Xbox had been experimenting with the game subscription service called Xbox Game Pass. This let subscribers pay a certain amount of money each month in return for access to play a wide variety of games on the service, similar to something like Netflix, but for games. Up until this point, many developers wouldn't allow their games on the platform due to fear of it devaluing their game. But Xbox, still believing that their idea would work, convinced them to test the service out with putting their older titles on that for the most part stopped earning them significant revenue, where the risk would be so low that it wouldn't really matter. Many developers agreed, and what they found is engagement surpassed even their most hopeful estimates. It was with this that Xbox pushed forward with their experiment and used Sea of Thieves as a way to test it. Sea of Thieves would be the first game released on Game Pass on launch day, which, keep in mind, this was revolutionary at the time. Nowadays we are kind of used to, we got Halo launching on Game Pass day one, Forza launching on Game Pass day one, but Sea of Thieves was the first one to do this, and if it wasn't for Sea of Thieves being successful, none of that would have ever happened. This really set Xbox apart from, say, PlayStation and Nintendo, who were still charging $60 on new games when they released. Even today they're still doing that. Craig Duncan had said in an interview that when he talked to Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, he asked him a question. If every single person plays Sea of Thieves on Game Pass and we don't ever sell a single copy, are you like kind of cool with that? And Spencer replied, absolutely. Without jumping too far ahead in our story, let's just say this was a big success and Sea of Thieves proved that Game Pass could be successful. Sea of Thieves became a turning point in Xbox's focus and has shaped the direction the company is heading in now. Before, it was a whole war between console sales and having the best exclusives, whereas now Xbox's focus is selling Game Pass and getting you into a subscription service. They're not really in the console wars anymore. Yes, they're always going to keep making new hardware, but that's not really their focus anymore. And that is partially due to Sea of Thieves being a success day one launch on Game Pass. As we approached the launch of the game, we saw many cool and intricate mechanics added with sailing and fighting. Stuff we take for granted as being basic today took 4 years of work to create. The game then features skeleton forts and the Kraken, along with 3 types of voyages and many islands to explore. Despite all of this great stuff, when the game released in 2018, it was met with lukewarm success. Many players said that the game lacked content and didn't have much to do. It's hard to understand that now, but if you were to play back at launch, you may remember what it was like. At launch, players could choose from one of 3 trading companies: the Gold Hoarders, the Order of Souls, and the Merchants Alliance. We also had Athena's Fortune, but obviously you would have to get the Pirate Legend for that, and you couldn't play that at launch. So each of these main 3 trading companies only had one voyage type. A big problem with these is as you progress, it didn't feel like the game was progressing with you. You would think being a higher level player would result in you earning better types of chest or harder enemies to fight, but no. The voyages you get at level 1 are basically the same as you got at level 50. This frustrated players who found this too repetitive and stale. Launch Sea of Thieves only had 2 world events: the Kraken, which at launch was a lot harder than it is now, and Skeleton Forts, which, let me tell you, back in the day, these were awesome. If you saw a fort active, it was a definite yes from everyone to go for it. Not only because it was fun, and it was a great spot for PvP, but the loot actually helped you level up. It was the best way to earn gold back then. Remember, back then we didn't have alliance flags, so you were truly alone, and you had to fight everyone off. There was no, hey, let's do an alliance server. Oh, hey, let's work together to do this fort. No, if you see another ship, their goal is to take that treasure from you. You have to stop them. The other problem with launch Sea of Thieves was the lack of cosmetics. Since the game is primarily focused on using gold for cosmetic purposes, your main motivator for doing voyages is to be able to buy these cosmetics. At launch, however, there just wasn't that much to buy. Along with that, basically every cosmetic was super expensive, meaning it would take a really long time to buy anything. Just buying a sail for your ship was like a really hard process to do. The best way I could have you picture it now is imagine buying any of the Dark Adventurer stuff. That's how it was just for the basic Outpost stuff back in the day. At launch, the world of Sea of Thieves had 3 distinct regions to explore: the Shores of Plenty, the Wilds, and the Ancient Isles. Rare nailed the actual world of Sea of Thieves, but what to do in that world is where Rare struggled. I think the game may have launched a bit too early, and they should have waited till the game had a bit more to offer before releasing it to the public. Next, we're going to talk about everything that has happened so far post-launch up until the end of 2021, which is getting close to 5 years after the launch of the game. So going back to year 1 of Sea of Thieves, the game launched in early March of 2018. We didn't see any major updates until May 15th of that year, with the ability to choose open or closed crew. For those of you who didn't play Sea of Thieves until after this point, you do not know the pain of only being able to play the game in an open crew setting. If you wanted a solo sloop, you couldn't do that. Everyone that has watched me for a while has known that I solo sloop a lot, and I'll go out and just have my own little adventures, and I'm cool with that. You couldn't do that at launch. You had to play with other people, or you had to get someone to fill in that spot. This update was very necessary, as before it used to be really difficult to get your friends into the game unless you both got on at the exact same time. Later that month, on May 28th, we got our first big content update with the Hungering Deep campaign. This update added the Bilge Rats, Megalodons, and Drums. It was also accompanied by a campaign that tasked players with hunting down the Megalodon. This update also had some cool additions such as the speaking trumpet, which allowed you to talk far away to players that might be too far for you to use voice chat just normally. This was really good, say if you're in a ship battle, you could yell across the ocean at someone. We also got flags, tattoos, and scars, which were all great for adding more cosmetics to buy. This was a great update and added some really cool stuff for players to play with. This is what I think the game should have launched with though. I think this update truly helped complete the game, and may have gotten better reviews with it launching 2 months later with this content at the start. We wouldn't see another big update for the game until 2 months later, with Cursed Sails released on July 30th. This brought with it Cursed Cannonballs along with skeleton ships and another campaign. This update also brought with it Alliance flags and price cuts for Outpost cosmetics. Now let's talk about the problem with these two updates. First, they had a really long time in between updates, making the game feel really stale. In between these content updates, they had challenges called Build Rat Adventures, which I never really found that fun. It was mostly just like a quick thing to keep players busy. The second and the biggest problem, for me at least, was that the campaigns, which were the main part of the update, had exclusive rewards tied to them, and you needed a full crew to do these campaigns. They were too hard to do solo, or even as a duo was difficult. Some you couldn't even do at all without a full crew. This is what really ruined the game for me as someone who, both back then and now, primarily played solo. So not being able to participate in the big content update made playing less and less enjoyable over time, and I was missing out on cosmetics that I wanted to earn. Even in concept, I'm not a big fan of these campaigns. After the campaign is over, all that content is gone, and you just can't do it anymore. If you want to do the Hunger and Deep campaign, you can't do that anymore. For a game whose main criticism at the time was not having enough to do, it made no sense to me to have content that would go away after a short period of time. I think Rare realized that this didn't make sense either, as after this they stopped doing campaigns in favor of more world events and tall tales. The next update we got was major. The Forsaken Shores update was released on September 26th and brought with it a whole new region to the world. The Devil's Roar was introduced in this update along with rowboats and seapost. This update was huge at the time, but now it seems players don't really care about this area of the map. Rowboats, however, were an amazing addition, which has really enabled some fun moments in the game. Next, on November 27th, we got Shrouded Spoils, which brought something really revolutionary. Fog. I'm just kidding with y'all. This update was kind of small, but it did do some cool things such as buffing the Kraken and Megalodon, along with the ability to customize the wheel, cannon, and capstan on your ship, which that's probably my favorite part of this update. Moving on to year 2 of Sea of Thieves with the anniversary update released on April 29th, which is actually a month after the anniversary actually happened. This update was massive, and to this day, I don't think we've had another update that's changed the game so fundamentally as this one did. Let's talk about everything we got in this update. We got all the Shores of Gold Tall Tales, so that's 10 different missions, voyages, whatever you want to think of it. There's basically a whole campaign added to the game. We got the arena, which at the time was really awesome and actually had people doing it. Now arena is kind of dead, which really sucks because I think it's actually a pretty good game mode when people are playing it. We also got the Hunter's Call trading company, which brought with it fishing and cooking. That has really changed the game because cooking has allowed us to kind of get an advantage if you put the effort in to get cooked food. But they also brought with it the harpoon gun, which is kind of like something you didn't think about, but it's kind of hard to live without the harpoon gun now. It's crazy how much they packed into one update. However, I feel like it would have been better to just spread this content out more. Between November of 2018 and April of 2019, we really didn't get much of any content due to Rare working on everything for this anniversary update. I remember dropping off from the game during this time and returning with the release of the anniversary update. It just seems like an odd choice to me. The only reason I could see them doing this is to have a big PR push so that they could try to get people that may have lost interest in the game and bring them back. But the thing was, I feel like in this time period, I was one of those people that dropped off the game. We got some small additions throughout the summer, but nothing too major until September 10th with Smuggler's Fortune update, adding the Pirate Emporium and pets, along with the Black Market. Alright, next we're going to be talking about one of my favorite updates to come to the game, and that was on October 15th with the addition of the Fort of the Dam. This fort was super unique and was the first world event that players could start whenever they wanted. I loved this fort. It requires you to fight in a unique way using lanterns to make the skeletons vulnerable. This place was also amazing for PvP, both then and still now. I've had some of my best moments in the game here, and it's definitely one of my favorite updates. Other notable additions in this update was that now skeleton captains could randomly spawn on islands, and we have the banjo, which is one of my favorite instruments in the game. A month later, on November 19th, we got a new tall tale, the Seabound Soul, which compared to the previous tall tales was a lot more cinematic and easier to follow. This update also brought with it Ashen Tombs and our first throwable, the Firebomb, which is a great weapon that I cannot live without. After this, in January of 2020, Microsoft declared that Sea of Thieves was its most successful IP it released during the Xbox One generation. This is an amazing accomplishment, and hearing that Microsoft is happy with how Sea of Thieves has performed means it will likely support the game for many years to come. A month later, on February 18th, we got the Cruise of Rage update, which, while being a decent sized update, it was a bit of a flop. This update added a new fort in the Devil's Roar, along with the Chest of Rage and Ashen Skeletons. To me, this feels like stuff that should have already been included when the Forsaken Shores update released, so it was a little confusing to me why we got this update so late afterwards. The month after, though, would bring a great update to the game, on March 11th with the Heart of Fire. This update truly felt like it had something for everyone. We got a new tall tale that was the second part following the Seabound Soul. This is one of my favorite tall tales in the game. I just think the Heart of Fire is a really good tall tale, and if you haven't done it yet, you should definitely check it out. This update also added the Run of Thieves Haven voyage for Pirate Legends, bringing new legendary treasures for pirates to acquire, which this was desperately needed because if you haven't done the regular Pirate Legend voyage, that one is really bad. It's basically just the same trading company voyages you had done previously, but all together, meaning you're basically spending a lot more time doing the same thing you had been doing trying to get to that level. It wasn't good, but I'm sure Sea of Thieves will fix this eventually, but the Run of Thieves Haven helped at least mitigate that a bit. But the best part of this update was the addition of the Chain Shot and Blunderbombs, which along with Firebombs a few months prior, really changes the way you can fight other players in the game. It made the game a lot more strategic, instead of before when players would just randomly shoot cannonballs or button mash while fighting up close. Yes, you still see this nowadays, but you can be more strategic now if you use chain shots, blunderbombs, and firebombs in combination with, say, a sword or pistol or sniper, regular cannonballs, whatever. While I loved the Fort of the Dam update for what it added in terms of like really fun moments in the game, the Heart of Fire update was probably one of the biggest updates we got in the game in terms of just adding the chain shot and blunderbombs and other content that they'd added. It was just great. Now we're moving on to the third year of the game, and this is truly when we see an exponential increase in updates. This started with the Heart of Fire at the end of year 2, but the first update of year 3 was Ships of Fortune, released on April 21st at the same time the world was fully shutting down from COVID-19. The main part of this update was emissaries and the addition of the Reaper's Bones. Other updates from this month was the increase of trading company levels from 50 to 75, and the ability to revive crewmates, which is surprising that it took us this long to get this feature, but it's definitely greatly appreciated now to have it. Over the next few months, updates focused mostly on cosmetics until we got to June 16th, Haunted Shores, which added a new world event where you fight ghost ships while listening to a disfigured floating ghost head insult you from the sky. This update brought with it 3 new cannonballs, one being the Wreath Ball, which is without question the best cannonball in the game. This cannonball acts similar to, say, a gunpowder keg explosion, so it's really devastating and really fun to use. Around the same time, the game was also released on Steam, which helped bring more players to the game, and this was really good for the growth of Sea of Thieves. A month later, we got the Ashen Winds update, which is actually around the time I started making videos for this channel. This update brought another new world event, where you fight Ashen Lords, who when defeated drop an Ashen Skull, which kind of acts like a flamethrower, which is really cool. Next, we have another one of my favorite updates, with the Vault of the Ancients update on September 8th. This update brought with the Ancient Vaults, which are super fun, and they make me feel like Indiana Jones while doing it, so that's obviously something I would love. Updates after this slowed down until December 2nd, Rare announced that Sea of Thieves was changing its update strategy to a seasonal approach, featuring a season pass and new events throughout the season. This is similar to games like Fortnite and Apex and even Halo now. Season 1 of Sea of Thieves released on January 27th and brought with it new Lost Shipment voyages, free and premium season passes, and a whole new system for challenges that level you up through the season pass. Next, moving on to Season 2, this marks the start of Year 4 of the game and came 3 months after Season 1 on April 14th, and brought with a new fort called the Fort of Fortune, along with merchant trade routes. This update was a bit underwhelming for players, but Rare had something planned for the season following that would blow everyone away. At E3 2021, Rare announced that Season 3 would be focused on 5 new tall tales based off the Pirates of the Caribbean. Rare approached Disney with the idea of bringing Pirates of the Caribbean to Sea of Thieves, who happily agreed. They kept the whole thing secret up until the announcement at E3. Even the insiders didn't know about this. It was truly an amazing surprise for everyone. This update was major, and it brought in 4.8 million players in the month of June, and it was a big win for the game. It also brought with it 3 new types of enemies and a brand new weapon in the form of the Trident of Dark Tides. This update also had a new portal system that let you sail your ship to new worlds, which I really hope to use more in the future. Following that, Season 4 came at a time when the hype from the Pirates of the Caribbean update had died down, and players were looking for something new to do. Because while the tall tales were really great, not much was added to the main game in terms of content. Yes, we had new enemies to fight, and we had the Trident, but that was kind of it. On September 22nd, we got to explore the Sunken Kingdom, which let us explore new underwater shrines and fight in siren treasuries. This was by far my favorite season of the year. While I love Season 3 and the Pirates of the Caribbean update, Season 4 brought with it something so new and fresh, but it was also just really fun to replay, and I found myself going back over and over again to redo the treasuries, and the shrines were just really fun to explore and had such a unique atmosphere to it. Finally, we reached Season 5 of Sea of Thieves, released in December of 2021. This brought with it some really cool mechanics to make role-playing even better in the game. We can bury our own treasure and make our own maps, shoot fireworks and flares in the sky, sit down in places all over the Sea of Thieves world, including in the taverns, and go to sleep like we're in Minecraft. We even got dice emotes that let us play basically any game that we can come up with. These last 3 seasons of 2021 were amazing, and I'm so excited to see what Sea of Thieves has planned for us next. So now we're moving on to 2022, and at the start of this year, we actually got this big presentation by Rare that showed us basically a roadmap for the entire year, as well as announcing some other stuff like about adventures coming out, which the first one would come out at the end of Season 5. They also talked about mysteries, and probably the most controversial thing that happened in Sea of Thieves this year was they decided to close the arena. So with the arena closure, they basically did some things where they gave some rewards out to people, but most of us weren't happy about the change. And I actually noticed that in the last month when that announcement came out, arena was popping, everyone was playing it, and it's just really sad because you could see that there was potential there for something really great, and they just did not do enough for it. Whether or not you think they did, that's really up to your interpretation, but to me, I feel like they could have done a lot more. I think I even talked about it in a previous video before, but it's just kind of disappointing that that's what happened. But the rest of 2022 was really amazing for the game, and the game has just been transformed by this year. So let's take a look at the roadmap and see what Rare had promised us for 2022. So they said with Season 6 we'd get Sea Forts and Pirate Legend content. So this was shown off during the big presentation they had, so they were a lot more specific with what we were getting for Season 6, whereas everything else was a bit more vague. We showed that Season 7 was going to have new ways to play and progress, and then Season 8 was going to be expanded roleplay and quest types, and then Season 9 was going to be new social options for crews. We'll see later on that this roadmap did not really fare out too well in the end. So we start off with our first adventure in the game, Shrouded Islands, and this one, while it wasn't that amazing to start off with, I will say it showed a lot of potential of what these adventures could be in the future. Following that adventure, the next month we got Season 6, which brought us Sea Forts into the game, new Plunder Pass, new Free Pass, all that kind of stuff they were used to with the seasons. Something they did a little different though with Season 6 compared to other seasons though is they actually staged out the content. Whereas previous seasons we used to see all the content come out at the beginning of the season, Season 6 they decided to have Sea Forts come out at the beginning, and then the Pirate Legend content, which ended up being the Legend of the Veil Voyage, which we'll talk about in a second, that came out towards the middle of it, and then towards the end of Season 6 we got the start of their mystery. So the Sea Forts are really amazing. There's 6 in total, and they're very similar to the Siren Treasuries that we had, but these are of course above the water, and I felt like they were a little bit better. They seem to be a bit faster, give better rewards, and just a little bit easier to do as well. So for most players, I'd say doing the Sea Forts are probably a bit better, even though I think the Siren Treasuries are very unique in how they play. Throughout this entire year, we got new adventures each month. I'm not going to go ahead and talk about every single adventure because I don't really think that'd be that useful to us, but I will pin some other videos that you can look at that talk about the adventures. So midway through Season 6, on April 20th, we got the Legend of the Veil Voyage. Now this was probably the biggest update that we've gotten to Pirate Legends since the Run of Thieves Haven Voyage came out. The Legend of the Veil is a massive voyage where it has tons of different parts to it, and it's very randomized, so it's very replayable. So basically it works in a 3-part structure where the first 2 parts are going to be randomized things where it can be different components every time, where it could be like you're swimming through a shipwreck graveyard or you're fighting phantoms and that kind of stuff. And it's all really cool that how they made the system work. And then the final part is always this giant battle where you're fighting these ghost sea forts, and there's just a big ghostly tornado looking thing in the middle and all sorts of stuff, and you shoot your cannonballs trying to take them down. It's really good. They did a really amazing job with it. It isn't the best for solo players though, because the final act basically is a giant beacon. It's like a world event, and it shows that everyone that you're doing something that's easy to steal from. So I think this voyage was really designed for bigger crews, or just at least a 2-person crew that can kind of help each other defend the loot and stuff. All in all though, this voyage was a welcome addition for Pirate Legends who have kind of been neglected by the game for a long time up to this point. And then finally towards the end of Season 6, we got the start of our first mystery, and this was the mystery of DeMarco. So DeMarco was in charge of the arena, so conveniently they shut down the arena and then they decided to kill him off. Kinda sucky for us arena fans, but what can you do? This mystery with DeMarco would keep giving us clues both in-game and outside of the game through social media and other stuff, and this mystery would go on all the way to Season 7. So there were 2 really major adventures that happened this year. The first one that we're going to talk about is Lost Sands. With Lost Sands, it was the Reapers versus basically everyone else in a fight for Golden Sands. Now we got to choose as a community which one we wanted to save, and it ended up being that the Reapers lost and the quote-unquote good guys won. With that, Golden Sands was saved, but we would notice that as the year progressed, Golden Sands would begin to change and evolve in a truly amazing looking way. So you might have noticed on that roadmap that it said that Season 7 was going to come out in June. But what actually happened though was Season 7 kept getting delayed all the way until August 3rd. This was probably the biggest issue that faced Sea of Thieves this year, because not only did they miss out on having the big update for the summertime, which is when most people are able to play and stuff just because people are out of school and that kind of thing. So they missed out on all of that, and Season 6 basically had to carry that. It gave Season 6 a bad reputation because it was here for basically the length of 2 seasons. And then Season 7, once it finally did come out, it was riddled with bugs, which made it basically unplayable to do any of the new stuff. The other problem with Season 7 being delayed so much was that now it pushed back everything else that was supposed to come out. If we look at that roadmap, Season 8 was actually supposed to come out in September. But because Season 7 was delayed all the way till August, now Season 8 didn't come out until the end of November. And because now that Season 8 was pushed back, Season 9 actually did not come out at all in 2022. But with all that said, let's actually go ahead and look at what Season 7 brought to us. And Season 7 actually brought a big feature that a lot of people have been wanting since the game came out, and that is Captaincy. So Captaincy, or the way that it was called for Season 7, Captains of Adventure, basically brought different features like being able to name your ship, actually owning a ship, so you could buy different ships, and you could actually name them, and then you could customize them. One of the things that I really loved was that it would save your cosmetics on your ship. That's actually one of the bugs I kept facing the season at the start of it, but it eventually got fixed. But that is one of the features that I really loved. Other stuff they brought was the Sovereign. The Sovereign make it really fast to sell your loot. They also added some perks for people with these captain ships, like having access to the Sovereign, which is basically an easier, faster way to sell your items. They added captain voyages and captain supplies, which are pretty nice. And the main part of this update was a lot of new cosmetic types, like trinkets and just more ship cosmetics. So we got to customize the voyage table and the beds and the curtains and all that kind of stuff, and it's all really nice. My favorite cosmetic though is probably the trinkets. I really love the trinkets that you can place all over your ship, and they're basically like little trophies of your different adventures. We also got milestones, which milestones are kind of like an evolution of accommodations that we previously had. We still technically do have accommodations, but now everything's more focused towards milestones, because milestones, they don't cap off, they continually track everything they've done, whether it's shooting cannons, or eating fruit, or selling fish, all that kind of stuff is being tracked. So while Season 7 didn't make a good impression when it came in, it did bring a lot of stuff that has been very well appreciated in the game. Similar to how Season 5 was with things like storage crate transfer and that kind of stuff. There was a general sentiment though with Season 7 that just people were kind of tired of the game. I think it was the amount of delays that kept happening, and then all the bugs that Season 7 brought with it just made it not very fun to be a Sea of Thieves player during this time. So then when Season 8 came, it was a very exciting time. So throughout the year through these adventures, we've been building up to the return of Flameheart. It's this thing that the game has been teasing since the Heart of Fire Tall Tale, and it's been a really intriguing part of the story of Sea of Thieves. So with this all building up, right before Season 8 came out, we had our next big major adventure, which was the Return of the Dam. And this basically pit Pendragon versus Flameheart, and us as a community had to choose, do we resurrect Flameheart or do we save Pendragon? And we ended up choosing to resurrect Flameheart. And personally, I'm happy about the decision. I know a lot of people aren't. I'm really excited to see what happens now with Flameheart being back. When this adventure happened, it was a really exciting time for the game, because prior to this, a lot of people were just tired of Sea of Thieves. All the delays with Season 7 and all the bugs that came with it, as well as you count in like the arena being shut down and stuff, it was kind of a depressing time for Sea of Thieves players. But then Season 8 was a shining glimmer of hope for all of us Sea of Thieves players, and that's because PvP was getting a major update in Season 8, something that would revolutionize the game. Season 8 released at the end of November brought with it on-demand PvP. So with this new on-demand PvP system, you actually got to dive down below the water and then pop up and fight players in a 1v1 style. And it's a really amazing system that they've done. And there's skill-based matchmaking involved with it, and there's new factions, the Guardians of Fortune and the Servant of Flame. You get to choose between these two factions to fight for, and you can switch between them whenever you want, and it's a really fun system that they've done with it. You can also unlock new curses for each of these factions, as well as a bunch of new cosmetics, and they added something that people have wanted for a long time, which was to be able to explore down below Reaper's hideout. So if you got to level 100 for this new Reaper's faction, you actually got to go down below into this Reaper area and receive the Skeleton Curse. Similarly for the Guardians of Fortune, or otherwise known as like the Pirate Legend faction. If you get to level 100 for them, you are able to access a new part of the Pirate Legend hideout, as well as receive the Blessing of Athena's Fortune, which basically turns you into a ghost. So Season 8 really brought with it a lot of great stuff, and it's really just brought the game back to being something that people want to play. Season 8 was a really great way for Sea of Thieves to end 2022. While the year had been pretty rocky for the game, it did bring a lot of stuff that players wanted. It brought new things to make the game shorter for players that want to do smaller game sessions, like the sea forts and then the captain voyages. It also brought in new Pirate Legend content in terms of the Legend of the Veil, as well as the Guardians of Fortune PvP system. And it brought captaincy, which is something that people have been wanting for like 5 years now. So a lot of amazing stuff was added this year, despite all the bugs and the removal of the arena and the delays. In general, I think this was a really great year for Sea of Thieves. Whether or not it's better than 2021, that's a question for another time. But in general, this was a really great year for the game. The development history of Sea of Thieves is fascinating to me. It's a game that steadily rose from lukewarm launch to a game that millions of people love. The game we see today has changed so much from what we saw back with the prototype in 2014. This game has had so much love and effort put into it by Rare. Many say Sea of Thieves was the game that saved Rare. While I don't know if that's true, I would definitely say it repaired the reputation of Rare to the public. The game has amassed over 25 million players and has won 5 awards. Before Sea of Thieves released, Rare had said they planned to support the game for 10 years. We're getting close to the halfway mark, and if the past has shown us anything, the best is yet to come. Sea of Thieves is one of my favorite games of all time, and I can tell the game will last for a very long time. I hope you all enjoyed this look back at the history of Sea of Thieves and its development. This video took a really long time to make, so if you enjoyed it, it'd mean a lot to me if you left a like and subscribe. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye y'all.